to John today. He's a former recruiter who now teaches other recruiters how to start their own business. John, tell us a little bit more about what you do.
Hey, Kate, glad to be here. Yeah, I basically put together a training program that I wish I had when I first started my journey of transitioning from a agency recruiter to agency recruiting firm owner. And when I made that transition, it was rough. I didn't have any help. It was mostly trial and error. And so then I figured, if I could start all over again, what would I do differently? And that's kind of what I help people with.
Yeah, when you launch, John, look, the first problem for people is getting clients, right? So when you launched, and I know things update and they change. When you launched, what did you start doing? Like day one, what were you focused on?
Yeah, so I had a double-edged sword where I started off with two clients that followed me from my previous agency. Because when I started my own, my two clients I worked with a lot, they said, well, hey, we'll sign agreements with you because we want to keep working with you, right? And so that was good because it was easy. I had job orders from day one, but the con was that I did not really implement like a prospecting system where I just basically nurtured these two accounts for the first like almost year. And then when those job orders dried up, they got closed, things shifted. I was in a bad place. I'm like, oh shoot, what do I do now? It's kind of like people say the worst thing that you want like to do when you first go to a casino is to win big, because after that you're hooked, right?
Yep.
Yeah. What you want to do is to fail miserably in the casino, and then you just stop doing it. So, yeah.
Yeah, note to everyone at home, what you want is to fail terribly. It'll keep you
fail terribly,
motivated.
and then learn, and then succeed in that order. Yeah.
Right. So like, okay, so obviously that was a mistake, right? Like it was like just focus, like it's great in one area, right? But then in another area, it's like, oh, I didn't focus on like BD and I didn't get like some other business going. And so that kind of reminds me of like, it's always valuable to take a moment and learn. And so what are some of the things that you see recruiters who are starting on their own kind of like, what are some of the mistakes you see them making?
Yeah, I think so. Usually the gaps in their skill set, there's only like really three, all right? Because when I ask kind of everybody, hey, look, you've been recruiting for 1, 2, maybe 3 years or 5 sometimes. Why haven't you kind of got off on your own? I'm sure you could kind of figure it out like I did. And they kind of say one of three things. Or one is like, hey, I'm really good at recruiting. Everyone's good at recruiting who's a recruiter, right? And then they're looking to go off on their own. That means they have some success, but usually it's a sales side. They're like, hey, you give me a job order that's hot in a couple of days and I can submit candidates, right? But the idea of going out and prospecting for their own clients and selling themselves and speaking with like a Zoom room full of like hiring managers who are director level can be intimidating, right? So that part is like, okay, one day when I learn sales, or maybe if my job will promote me to full desk and eventually in a few years, right? So that's kind of the biggest one. So for that reason, my program is really sales focused. And, and I've done sales training programs and from my experience put together what I feel works really well. And then I think the second thing that's a missing piece is like the business side. Like they're like, hey, I've done full desk recruiting. I'm comfortable with clients, but I've never run my own business. So I'm not sure how to incorporate first, or how do business taxes work. And then they'll just go down a rabbit hole of like learning about getting business licenses. So it's random stuff that's not really relevant, right? And so that can be a big obstacle. So I kind of iron that out by having that kind of in the program and how it all works. So I think those are the main two things, sales, business, and I think just someone to help hold them accountable. I think the last aspect is like the mindset, right? Because just like with everything, like people say golf is like 90% mindset. It's like, yeah, people want to, and people have dreams. There's like a dreamer and a doer, and the dreamer dreams big, but they're like, how do I even get out of bed and just do this? And I'm working from my kitchen by myself and trying to sell my services to the director level people when I've never done that before. It can be daunting. And I think that fear is like paralyzing, right? They go into like analysis paralysis and never take action. So
Yeah,
those are two things I solve for, I think.
Yeah, I myself went through that. I'm like at my kitchen table doing this and I'm like, what am I doing? You know what I mean? And it's like having someone in your corner that's been there, done that, and gone all the way through is really helpful. Let me ask you, John, since you have great training. I know you did Sandler and like you're sales extraordinaire. How do you view sales versus marketing in recruiting?
I think that it's funny, right? I think you need to have both. The way I see it, it's similar to like online dating. So I have a lot
Oh
of
my
single.
gosh, I love this. I'm already excited. I've been comparing
Okay,
recruiting to dating.
Relax. Okay.
I
now
know, but I've literally been like, it's like dating. Okay, great.
yeah,
I'm
not
ready.
just for you. Yeah, so I have a lot of friends who are single now, and some people are in this, a lot of them are in the strategy of like, I just need better like marketing. I need better photos. I need a funnier like caption or headline on my profile, and I need to have go on every single app, buy every single super like, and just market myself. Right? It's a numbers game. But they fail to realize that at some point you have to have a conversation, and if you have poor conversation skills, doesn't matter how good the box of the iPhone is when you open up the phone's crappy, right? Or
Yeah.
it doesn't communicate well. So similarly, I think a lot of people in recruiting are focusing on like LinkedIn automation tools and scrapers and chat bots and content marketing, and all these things that can get more eyeballs, but then the conversion mechanism or the sales part is maybe lacking, right? Other people are like, hey, get me on the phone with a client, I'm good, but then they don't sell themselves well. They're not using optimized tools. So I think you need to have both, right? Like get the eyeballs and put yourself out there, but then also when you get an interest, be able to convert. And it's very like a lot of people are bashing sales in or like the art of conversation as like the old way, right? A lot of people out there like this is the old way of recruiting, but at some point when you're talking to like the person who's making the decision about hiring, they want to talk to somebody. They're like, look, if I'm paying you a $25,000 fee, let's jump on a call and make sure I need to feel comfortable that you know my world and you're going to say the right thing. And if you are great at marketing and great at whatever automation tools, but then when it comes to that, that part doesn't go well, then yeah, it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah. So let's,
Both, I think.
yeah. I couldn't agree more, man. It's so funny when people go, oh, it's the old way. I'm like, dude, human to human conversation, like that's bread and butter. Like, yeah, you want to have good, good content, most placeable candidate marketing,
Yeah.
interesting, unique ways to reach out, video, email. Then you need to be able to get on the phone. So let's talk about, and this is something that, people that I've mentored, it's hard to teach, you know what I mean? Like, as
Yeah.
it's something that is just comes so naturally to some people that it's hard. So what do you walk me through that a little bit? Like, let's say you got a recruiter, let's say you got someone like me, very shy, introverted. So someone that, they're not as good on the sales side. How do you talk to them? Like kind of what are some of the mindsets that you kind of discuss with them?
Sure. So the way I approach it is really to break it down into its core components, because really I think where we're all saying is be smart and be confident. All right. And it's kind of
Oh,
like,
it's that easy.
yeah, right. And it's like, yeah, it's like when you have if you have two single guys, one guy's really good looking. He's like, yeah, just be confident. That's what I do.
You're like, all
And
right,
they're
make
like,
it easy
yeah,
for
great.
you.
Like,
Right.
you're
Yeah.
6'1" and you look like Brad Pitt, right? That's not the same. And
Mhm.
so what I did was I looked at, okay, confidence and skill on the phone with a client. Like, what does that mean? Because you can't tell people just sell or be this or be authentic and be yourself. And that's not actionable, right? And I think
Mhm.
advice or coaching is only as good as it is actionable.
Actionable. Yeah,
Let's
agreed.
break this down. Let's step back. Okay, for a successful call with a client, I think there has to be a setting expectations, right? And so I think a lot of Sandler stuff is like setting expectations, making sure they agree to each step of it, right? So they agree to like, hey, how much time are we going to talk for? What's the purpose of this call? What's the possible outcomes? And if they're okay with that, just doing that upfront, like a little mini, Sandler calls it an upfront contract. I call it setting
Mhm.
expectations. So that's like a skill, though. That's a very um, bullet point. You can follow that to a T and just get that. And then there's more like subtext, they're more nuanced, because is the client you're talking to a straight shooter? Like, hey, look, I got 30 seconds. What do you got for me, right? Like the Gordon Gecko. Remember like the
Mhm.
old Wall Street, right? When he asked Charlie
Mhm.
Sheen, like, hey, he's like, what do you got for me? He's like, well, he's like, what do you got for me? Like, and then when I think you talk to like a lot of director level, C-level hiring managers, they're like, what do you got for me?
Mm-hmm.
And if your style is like, well, I'm kind of warm and fuzzy, let me ask you about the holidays, and you're going to have a disconnect, right? So then teaching the nuanced like conversational skills like mirroring, tonality, listening, discovering pain, that stuff, you're right, it takes time. And it's like you can't learn sales or like riding a bicycle from a book, right? Well, you can't learn over a weekend. It's a long-term process. And so like, just to like elaborate on that part, like the old way, I think the old way of thought is like sell to people the way you want to be sold, or talk to people the way you want to be sold. But if you, I think there's like three
That only
main.
works. Yeah, that only works a little bit of the time.
Yeah, well, it only works like 33% of the time, I think, because there's really three main personality types you'll run into when you talk to a client, like the straight A shooter, like get to the point, the warm and fuzzy, like, hey, Todd, how's it going? And, yeah, so thanks for reaching out to me. And there's like the analytical, like, hey, tell me more information so I can make an informed decision. There's like engineering, hiring managers, like accountants, right? And so then if you're one of those personality types, you'll only get along with them 1 out of 3 times, right? Where you just click. So instead, if you communicate to people or clients the way they like to be communicated with, then they'll kind of say something like, you know what, I can't put my finger on it, but I like Todd or I like Kate. Something about her, I don't know, but it's that little like nuanced thing, but that takes time.
Yeah, this is fascinating to me. In your program, John, just because I'm curious, do you have some recordings of like your calls and intake calls and your outreach calls so that people can, kind of start modeling after, what you do, or how do you teach that, I guess?
So most of what I do is, so my like the SOP for like questions on like the private Facebook group we have for members is, look, if you get a message from a potential client or something that's like out of left field, you're not sure how to best reply. Step 1, take a screenshot, post it in the Facebook group so then other members can learn from the answer. Step 2 is type in what you plan on saying. Like, here's what I think my best guess is. I'm about to send this. And then step 3, I'll break down and give you my suggestions about it, right? So this morning, one of my clients messaged me saying, hey, my prospective client wants to reschedule the call today. Here's what I think I'm going to say. What do you think, right? And he was going to say, hey, how about Monday between 1 to 5 Central Time, right? So I said, okay, that's one, thanks for reaching out and pausing, because he just wanted to do a quick response rate. This is a common trap for recruiters, is that they like to be like ping pong machines, or like just bounce the message back and think the faster I reply, the faster they'll get back to me. And that's kind of like in dating. You just want to text the first thing that comes to your mind.
Don't do that. Don't do that. It's
No,
like,
why did I say
no, like it's such a, like, if you do that, I love this analogy because it's like, that is so unattractive. Like, if you are that available all the time, like that.
Well, I think one thing, it's more like you're not sending the most optimal response, right? Because you're not thinking out, not thinking things through. So I said, look, all right, 1, let's anticipate. So my process is, I said, look, 1, I'll give you my process, and 2, I'll give you my suggestion. Right? So my process is, the potential client says, hey, can't make it, have to do a presentation, can we reschedule? And so I said, well, first of all, if you say, how about Monday? He might say, 1, Monday's not good. Or he might be like, 2, 1 to 5 p.m. is not good. And now you have to go back and forth. Well, what time is good? It's like dating, right? Like, are you free Friday? But you don't say that, because then they're like, Friday and busy. How's Saturday? Maybe. Sunday? And now you're like, it's getting kind of weird now, right?
Yeah.
And so by anticipating that, I said, look, instead of saying that, you can just book on his calendar. He gave you a link before, right? Just book on there. That way you guarantee your time slot. But then the problem was, it's like a week out. So he wanted to do it sooner. So book it so you have it on your calendar, and then offer to do it earlier. It's like, hey, I booked for Friday at 2. If you'd like to speak sooner, please let me know a date/time, right? And also, perfect. I said, lastly, look, the guy wrote back in 3 sentences, 3 short lines, like, hey, have to reschedule. Can we do another day? So, and he wrote this like long, warm and fuzzy paragraph, and like, yeah, cut that down.
Yeah. 3. I see so many outreach messages too. Like, I had one of the people that I've mentored, and they were like, what do you think of my, email? And I'm like, that is a novel. Well, 2 sentences, 3 sentences, to the point.
A lot of times these people are busy. Exactly. They're super busy. If you're getting on the phone with the CEO, like, that guy's running or woman running a lot.
Going back to dating, it's like, if my single friend shows me their phone and they're like, I'm texting this girl, I'm like, look, don't tell me if you're the blue bubble, the white bubble, like, let me see. And I'll just scroll really fast. And whoever has a bigger text bubble is more invested in the conversation. So when I see like giant text bubble and small text bubble, giant text bubble, I'm like, all right.
Yeah, this is going sideways.
Yeah, it's so funny you say that. I literally cut responses. So like, if you one word me, I'm not talking to you anymore. Like, and it's kind of like a filter. It's like also getting that like you're valuable too. So like remembering like that you get to match and mirror conversations.
Right. So then I think like at the end of the day, having sales skills is just having good conversation skills and understanding of human psychology and understanding the industry. And that can't be taught in a weekend workshop. I don't think it can be taught like in just a course or a book and that's it, right? Like Todd, we were talking about earlier before recording that it takes lots of one-on-one time, lots of attention. So I think like for that reason, the guy who's doing the client call, it's his first client call. So I said, look, I'll jump on the call with you, introduce me as your recruiter. I'll just make sure that things are kind of in the right direction. I'll defer to you for all the technical questions about the job. And he's like, oh, that's awesome. So I'll jump on the phone with one of my students to help them close a client because the first one or two is the hardest. And
Yeah.
after that, they're confident, right?
That's such a fantastic thing to do because it really is like, here's hands on. I'm going to position you in authority, leave you there, but I will help guide. Like, I got you, you know, and like, that's the beauty of a coach. Like, they got you.
Yeah, it's like having a wingman, right? Or wingwoman for dating. They're like, hey, I'll go there. I'll make you sound good, right?
Yeah, I'm curious about this. This is that's awesome that you do that. Do you hop on and lead the call, or do you say, hey, you do the intro, you lead, I'm here as a resource? Like, how do you kind of do that?
It's always a case by case basis. So for this guy who's doing the call, he's brand new, so I'll do more of it, right? And then if they're already more experienced, I'll just kind of be there just to jump in case this are going off the track, right?
Yeah.
So it just really depends. And sometimes I'm not even there at all. If they're good or they don't want me there, they don't need it, then like cool, record the call. I'll say record it,
Yep.
timestamp the parts where you want me to jump in. And that way it makes them like listen to the call again and find exactly what they want me to help diagnose. And then I'll look at that.
What about when, let's say they're recruiting in pharmaceuticals or they're recruiting in, IT or accounting? It's hard because that's something that happens to me too, where I'm like, I've done a lot of different types of recruiting. Sometimes I'm on the phone with a client and I don't know all this stuff. So how do you handle that?
Yeah, well, and that's kind of actually goes to the root cause of like before you even start your agency, start your own recruiting business, it's important to pick your niche,
Mhm.
right? And then, so usually what you're talking about is a symptom of a problem of taking on too many roles that are out of your core, essentially, right?
Mm,
And it's tempting because in the beginning, that was I fell into that trap. In the beginning, I was doing software engineers, and then one of my clients said, "Hey, can you take a stab at this network role?" I'm like, sure. And then someone else can take a stab at this like UX designer. I'm like, sure, I can do that. And then pretty soon I'm just spread thin and sounding stupid to everybody that I'm talking to, basically.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
double edged because that's the way I'm such a curious person that I love learning about new roles. And so,
Mhm.
all of my mentors were like, will you please just focus on one? And it's like, I think from a learning perspective, it's good. It's good to
Yeah.
branch out from a learning. From a business perspective of making money now, that's a luxury that sometimes you don't have. If
Yeah,
that
I
makes
think you can
sense.
kind of have a system of like, so we have like in the CRM like that I built for people. I like, look, you have your A job orders, the hot stuff, and the B, it's like okay, and then
Mhm.
C, it's like don't even submit people, just keep it open just in case. And so I think it's okay to take on like a role that's like out of your core a little bit, as long as you put it in the C category and you never work on it unless you fill all your A and B positions. And if you happen to come across somebody, you're like, sure, this C job order is linked to a paid client. They'll pay me for this. And then just set the expectation up front to the client. Say, you know what, I might know some people. This is out of my core. So the response rate is not going to be the same as what we're working on, we're focusing on, unless it's a priority. If it is, then you can partner with other people and find other recruiters that know and do a split or something, right? But at the end of the day, I think if you think in terms of like the client's best interest, they'll help determine how you want to do it. Because if you tell a client, sure, I'll work on this random job order. And to me, I feel like when you take on a job order, you're kind of like shaking hands saying, I will do my
Mm.
best work. I'll give you my best. And we say that, right? We say, sure, thanks for working with me. Like, I can't wait to partner with you. I will give you my best work. But then are we really, if we're taking on random job orders, it's more of like, I'm scratching my like intellectual itch, right? That wanting to learn or a curiosity. I think it'll be fun. But at the end of the day, if that's not really our core, we just have to let them know up front and set expectations. So
Yeah, it's
it's all
really
good.
powerful when you get to a point in your agency that you're turning down business or you're
Mhm.
referring it out and you're
Yeah.
like, I'm very clear that that's, not what we do and not what we're focused on. I think that's a really I think that's a really
Yeah.
powerful place.
I mean, I think that's a great strategy too. Like I had a good friend who I later on coached to help start his agency. He all he did was sales people. So any salesperson I got, I flip it to him. Any engineering recs he got, he flipped it to me. And that's a way you can win without, still do win-win, right? I know you guys are big on that, and that's
Super big.
yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting. We talked about, or you alluded to, picking your niche. So I'm
Yeah.
curious, John, do most of the people that you coach, are they coming to you with already a niche picked, or are you helping them do that? And if
Yeah.
so, kind of what does that conversation look like?
Yeah, usually they have a niche already. When they don't is when they have to go through like a discovery process where I say like take your best guess at like look at the top 2 or 3 jobs you've placed in the last 6 months or last year, and the jobs where if you were talking to a client manager, you could be able to speak kind of intelligently about it and not feel like you're out
Out
of
of
your
your depth.
core.
Yeah.
But that's like, okay, what am I good at? But that might not be what the market is hiring for. I might be really good at finding like marketing assistants, right? But right now that might not be essential, right? And then so you kind of overlay a Venn diagram style. What are the hot job words? Who's posting jobs in that? And then you just talk to them, and then you kind of pick 2 or 3 horses, right? So to speak, and just then they work in them, and one will kind of be the clear winner after a while. Be like, I thought this would be hot, but actually I'm getting all responses on this, so I'm going to shift to this. And usually that shift is higher in seniority. So what ends up happening is I had a client who does works for hospitals, that's hospital staffing, and she was getting really no responses for like nursing, nursing assistants, even nursing managers. But when she shifted to like director of ICUs, she was getting like super fast response rate because that's what's rare. Director of ICU in like middle of nowhere hospitals, right? They don't get marketed by agencies. She was getting like 50% or higher response rate. So she just made her niche director level management at hospitals, right?
Mm,
But that
yeah,
wasn't her
that's
first guess, and that wouldn't have been my first guess. I wouldn't have known.
Right.
yeah.
It's testing it.
When
Yeah,
I work
testing.
with people, it's like you do the lower level roles to kind of cut your teeth on them. But I'm always like, look, move up the chain for sure. You know what I mean? Like move up in
Mhm.
complexity, and part of that is like, look, when you're filling lower level roles, any 24-year-old, you know
Yeah,
what I mean, or 23-year-old at an agency can do that. When you get to a point that you're doing management and director level, like it's a different game. There's not that many people that can get on the phone and actually do that. So I always encourage like, okay, start with what you know and cut your teeth on it, and then work your way up the ladder to more and more complicated things because you know it takes I mean I don't want to make it about age, but like it takes a 30-year-old to get, you know what I mean? And there are roles that like I can't do. It's like I
yeah,
need more gray hair, like I was telling a friend, I'm like, last year or the year before, someone placed the CEO at Uber.
yeah. Right, right. So
That
someone got paid for that. Yeah,
someone
Right.
got paid millions. And
yeah,
it's like, I can't do that. It's like,
sure.
yeah, work your way up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think you can kind of like, and then when it comes to, okay, how do we translate that to like coaching, right? How do you tell people, okay, find your sweet spot? Because that's kind of hard to quantify. Then that's kind of, I had a challenge with that. And I kind of said, look, here are the general rules, like 50 to 200 employees is like a nice sweet spot, right? Where they're big enough where they're growing and they have money, but they're not so large where they have a team of recruiters where you're adding less value, right? Or they might see you as competition. And that's just a general guideline. Depending on your niche, it might go up and down. And then on LinkedIn jobs, when people post, you can see how many applicants. So if 100 people have applied to this job in 2 days, you're like, okay, you're not going to probably get that excited response of like, this job's been open for 2 months and there's been one applicant and it's a director level role. They're probably going to be interested in maybe seeing more people, right? So
Yeah, that's very smart. That's very smart. Everyone listening, John is brilliant.
no,
That
it's
is
just
very
trial
smart.
and error. Yeah,
No, that's
yeah,
smart. And
yeah.
look, I love the wheelhouse of
Mhm.
50 to 200. I love playing in that. And they're sharp, at that size of an organization, they're generally all A players. Like you really can't have anything less.
Yeah, and they still
Um,
pay 20% or higher fees, so you're
yeah, they'll
still
pay
getting paid.
well.
Yeah,
And it's like for them, they have so much trouble filling because it's like, yeah, when a company gets to be 100,000 people, you're hiring average. You have
yeah,
to. There's not enough people.
yeah,
When you're that small, you're hiring mainly A players. It is hard to find
yeah,
them. And so it's like they're going to be, but yeah, that's really interesting. So if you're listening at home, if you go on LinkedIn and you see a job and there's like 2 applicants, chances are that person is going to be pretty open to having a conversation.
Yeah, it's the nice thing is with technology, we have tools, right? So it's like if you're having an approach like that using LinkedIn and using tools to help calibrate your activity, but then you have when you're on the phone or messaging back and forth, you have that core strength in sales, and you understand the business and how to like run it. Then I think you're in a good position, right? So that's my goal because it took me forever to get to that place, and if I were to do it again, I could do it much faster. Hindsight 2020, right?
Yeah.
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 So
When you're, and this is something that you talked about in the beginning that I'm just curious about,
sure.
it's when you get on the phone, it's important to read the person. Are they just like short and to the point? Are they a little bit, more fluffy? When you're trying to, get someone to understand that, is it just trial and error? Or do you talk to them a little bit about like, okay, watch out for this and listen for this, and these might be key indicators?
Yeah, it's a ladder. So good question. So for example, with my student, he got a super short response from the client, and just based on that, you can take your best guess. Like they're saying, like it's like Todd, need to reschedule. Is that okay? It's like okay, you know exactly who you're talking to,
Yeah, there's
right?
no warm and fluffy there.
Yeah, same thing with text. It's like if someone's texting you, like send you 3 emojis, you're like, all right, you can play with some emojis now, but if they're not, don't get too cute, right? So it's like you want to calibrate. So you get people leave you clues based on their title. You can kind of guess, right? If they're a director of engineering, they're probably an engineer at one point. And so they are probably the type that likes information, wants to know all the details about the candidate before they make a decision to work with you or talk to the candidate, right? But if they're a VP of sales, then there'll be more like, what do you got for me? And they want you just to be like, look, here's my candidate, boom, 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 works for your competitor, outperforms quarters of the last 6 quarters, is interested in your company. You want to see the resume, right? You just kind of like, and you can guess based on the title, how they've been replying to you on email or LinkedIn, because there's always a electronic conversation before you jump on the call, right?
Right.
So I think there you can kind of take your best guess, and then on the call you'll know.
Yeah, I love what you're sharing here and like how important it is to really focus in and match the communication. And that's how you like develop rapport. That's how you really kind of like,
that's what it is. Like,
yeah.
like that's why people used to think like rapport is like talking about the weather or like small talk or the holidays now and that's a common trap. That's just, but if you are communicating with the same natural style the other person is, and you genuinely have their best interest in mind, then they can sense that, right? People have a good BS detector, right? These days. And it's hard to overcome that, right? You have to kind of be genuine, have your right intention, and then, know your stuff.
Yeah. Oh, I love this. John, I know you have a free gift for our audience. Can you share with us what that is?
Yeah, so I have a short kind of overview video on my website, and so people can check that out if they like to kind of learn more about kind of the approach. I break down like niche. I break down the 3 common objections and reasons why people are like hesitant or afraid of starting their own recruiting business and how to kind of approach that, right? And then as a gift, if they'd like, anyone who's watching this is free to come and just sit in on one of my group coaching calls. Kind of like I'm teaching like a judo class. You want to come in and watch the class? I think you'll get a good sense of just the stuff we talk about. And I think it'll be inspiring because when you do that, I remember because I do martial arts, and when I sat in on my first martial arts class, it was inspiring to see people that were like 1 year ahead of me, 6 years ahead of me, and they're doing like flips. I'm like, okay. And then you walk out with a different frame, right? So I have my black belt here. It's like communicate until I remember, all right, be zen, be calm. It's more like be calm, be zen, be like, be like watcher, right?
Yeah. Flow. I love this. Exactly. That's so generous, John.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. You guys, to access John's training, just scroll below and click the link. It'll take you straight there. And then what's the number one thing you want to leave our audience with?
I think, I think don't be afraid to ask for help and model, right? Look to see people who've done it well. And it doesn't have to be like a coach or a course. It can just be someone that you've worked with in the past that can be a mentor role, and just ask them, hey, can I pick your brain sometime? And used to be, can I buy you a cup of coffee, or can I just email you a coffee gift card, right? Or something. can I DoorDash something to you and then pick your brain on Zoom for 20 minutes? And I think it helps. That's how I kind of got started. I had people who were generous with their time. And I think people who have had success, they want to kind of pay it forward. So in a way, a lot of people are afraid that I don't want to bother that person, or I haven't talked to them in a year, I haven't worked with them. But people who are successful, they remember when they were young and scrappy, right? And they are generous with their time if you're genuine and respectful and are hungry